The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, Week 7 DraftKings picks and preview. If you want to get in a draw for $20 DK, I mean, you can subscribe to the audio podcast. You're not in a draw for $20 DK, but I suggest you do that anyway, so you can bring me in your pocket on your phone, wherever you go. Listen to any time you want. But to get into that draw, smash the like button. That's step 1. Step 2, go to the comment section, leave your DraftKings handle, and tell me who is your favorite running back play on the main slate that is less than $5,000 in the Week 7 DraftKings Millionaire Maker Contest. We're talking main slate only today. 10 games, no London game, no Sunday night game, no Thursday, no Monday, just the Millionaire Maker slate. To help me break this all down from DFS On Demand and the Rick Run Good YouTube channel, it's Rick Gehman. What's going on, dude?
Hey, Pat. It's going well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, see, I didn't realize, like you said, you woke up at like 5 o'clock in the morning every single day. So this is like midday for you.
Yeah, I'm like 2 cups of coffee in. I'm in mid-season form is what we would say. I'm ready to rock and roll.
2 cups of coffee in. I'm on like cup 8 and I've been up for 20 minutes.
Oh, there you go. That's pretty good.
Hey, it's the only way I can sustain this level of energy for like hour-long period. People don't know that as soon as the show is finished, I just like collapse on the floor next to me and like shiver up into like a huddled ball, and then I'm just dead until the next show.
Yeah, I'll be tucked into bed at like 8:30 tonight. So no worries there.
All right, so let's get right into this. Running backs to start off with. We go to the very top of the list. I mean, the gods did take the Kansas City-Cincinnati game away from us, but now we get Todd Gurley back on the slate. He's less than last week. That's nice. He's only $9,800. Kamara is $8,500. Elliott is $81. Then you got McCaffrey, James White at $6,900, TJ Yeldon at $64, Leonard Fournette at $6,000, and that's it for your above $6,000 running backs. When people construct lineups this week, do you think this is one of these weeks where you're trying to jam in 2 of the very top end guys, and do you think that that's going to be necessary?
Well, I'm not sure how possible it is, quite honestly, Pat. I mean, you've got Gurley there at $9,800, which is going to be expensive. And a lot of the values that we would normally want to pair with him might not be on this slate, right? So there's no Ito Smith on this slate. You might have to look at one of the Eagles running backs to try to get some of these top tier guys in. So I would not be surprised. It's not a strategy that I'm going to take, but I would not be surprised if you were trying to jam in, James White and TJ Yeldon, 2 of those guys down at the bottom of your tier that you kind of discussed. I just don't know how likely it's going to be to get 2 guys anywhere in, Gurley and another one of those top guys. I think it's going to be pretty difficult.
So if you had to start with, let's say, one of the top running backs, is paying up for Gurley the way to go, or do you take the discount and take the $8,100 for Zeke Elliott?
Yeah, so not a knock on Gurley, obviously, because there's really literally nothing to knock about him. But the savings on Zeke is really, really good. Averaging 27 touches in the last 3 weeks. It's the most in the NFL. He's really getting all the work inside the red zone. Unfortunately, his team just doesn't get to the red zone as often as we'd like. But the only thing he's really lacking is the touchdown. So to take the discount on what we talk about constantly, which is volume and opportunity, Zeke checks off both of those boxes. I'm absolutely willing to start my lineups there. He's probably my favorite running back here.
The discount on the price is the big thing for me, but Kamara is right there at $8,500. Ingram is at $5,900. Do you think that more people will own Ingram or own Kamara?
I think more will own Ingram. Now, this is a kind of not like a mob mindset, but someone like Alvin Kamara who burns you last week. The situation has completely changed in New England. People don't know what to expect. Kamara is going to have another big game, and a lot of people are going to miss out on it. I'm not sure that that's incorrect, but that's what's going to happen, right? He's got a really bad matchup on paper with Baltimore this week, and you're just so much concern about Kamara, but you want access to that Saints offense, so it's going to be a lot easier for all these owners to go out and click Mark Ingram's name coming off of the 2 touchdown game, as opposed to just hoping and buying low on Kamara and hoping he bounce back.
Is it worth burning a few lineups in tournaments on Kamara just because that ownership is going to be so low?
Yes. So if you're playing 20 lineups, I'm not good with the ownership. I leave that to the experts, but I assume only a handful of lineups to get overweight on Kamara. And I would not be surprised if we woke up on Monday and he's your highest scoring running back on the slate, right? If Sean Payton is factual and saying, hey, we're going to try to get a better split, We've seen Kamara only needs 16, 18 touches to score 40 DraftKings points. So if you're a glutton for punishment, I'd say, yeah, go out and grab Kamara. I think he's one of the more volatile options on the slate. But when you say, is he worth it? Yeah, like you could wake up with 40 points on Monday.
So, I mean, Christian McCaffrey, $7,700 as well, coming off, a down game last week. But now he gets the Eagles, and what I would think is going to shoot out more than, I would say that the over is more in play than the under is for that game, just based on what we're seeing with the Philly defense, with the Carolina defense. Both pretty staunch run defenses, but you start getting Christian McCaffrey involved in the passing game, then all of a sudden, if he just does what he did last week and scores a touchdown, all of a sudden he's paying off his $7,700 price. The touchdowns are always going to be a concern with him, but James White is very much in the same boat as him in terms of what they bring to the table in terms of DraftKings scoring. Of course, it's full point PPR, so that's always enticing with both those guys. Do you have a preference between the two, or are they avoids for the week?
Yeah, so this is kind of interesting, right? I almost treat these guys more as wide receivers than I do as running backs, right? Anything that they get on the ground is just gravy. So when you go and compare their prices, 7,700 and 6,900 to kind of like wide receiver peers, you're basically between Mike Evans and DeAndre Hopkins. Unfortunately, I'd probably prefer a true wide receiver in those spots. I do agree with you about Christian McCaffrey that it's more likely than not that this game turns into a shootout as opposed to a defensive battle. So I think McCaffrey could be much more involved. I love James White as a player on my real life football team, but the concern is, the Patriots are getting healthy, right? They've got as many weapons at this point in the season as they've had all year. White is still going to be heavily involved, but we've seen it where now his salary is coming up, and there's a chance that his opportunity goes down here, or is at least more spread out. It's not as consistent on a weekly basis. So yes, both of them have concerns for me. I will sprinkle them, but I will mostly be avoiding both of those situations just because I think there's better options elsewhere.
If Fournette is able to return, would you consider rolling him out there? Or is the hamstring injury still too much of a concern that he could be in a timeshare with TJ Yeldon at least the first week back? And let's say he sits. Does that make TJ Yeldon a play you need to go after?
Yeah, so I'd obviously like TJ Yeldon a lot more if we can get Fournette ruled out of this game. If Fournette starts and we don't have any indication of if he's going to be on a snap count or a pitch count or anything like that, I'd be worried to roll either of those guys out. Quite honestly, it's just one of these situations where there might not be enough touches to go around. I think that Fournette could, and I don't even ever try to predict injuries, but we know what these hamstrings are like, Pat. Like he goes out there, he kind of takes one around the corner and tweaks it. Like who knows if he plays the entire game, he might be back and forth between those cool little blue tents they've got on the sideline. So I don't know. I'd prefer to just avoid the situation altogether, but I would like Yeldon if we could get Fournette ruled out of this game.
So it seems like a lot of people will probably just drop into the $5,000 area in order to find their running backs, because there's some pretty decent options in here, and there's a couple injury guys that's like, I don't know if they're going to play, and it might hurt their ownership a little bit. Like, you have Ingram at 59. I have no interest in that because I never have interest in Mark Ingram. Screw Mark Ingram. Chris Thompson's 58. He could be back from that rib injury, from the ankle injury, and it's a nice matchup against Dallas for him in particular because it's hard to run on Dallas, but pass-catching running backs do have an easier time. Then there's Dalvin Cook at $5,700. Like, the Jets' pass defense is pretty good, and the run defense, it's not so hot, and it feels like they've been keeping him out until he's actually 100% healthy, and then when he comes back, he's going to be good to go. People will wait a week to see what happens with the usage that Dalvin Cook gets. But if he is active for this game, I'm using him against the Jets.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, this is a situation where it's almost team dependent, right? We've seen when teams can really screw up the whole injury thing and they can bring back someone too early. I like the way that Minnesota is kind of playing this, right? And they have the luxury because they know they're a good football team. They can sit Dalvin Cook out a week or two, maybe longer than they would for some teams that are in the thick of it and really need to, win games to get into the playoffs. So I like the way that Minnesota has been handling this by all indications. Looked like he was pretty close to playing last week. They give him the extra week. I agree with you. This is one of those situations opposite of Fournette where if Dalvin Cook is playing, yeah, let's fire him up. I don't have too many concerns about that. I think Minnesota's done a good job here.
So after Cook, it's like LaShawn McCoy, Jordan Howard, Sony Michel, Matt Breida is in that mix as well. Then we have Tariq Cohen, Latavius Murray, and now we're below $5,000 all of a sudden with Drake, Collins, Hyde, Clement, Adrian Peterson. Like if Thompson sits again, I know it's a bad matchup, but Adrian Peterson, I don't love it, but it's somewhat enticing because it's only $4,600, right?
Yeah, I actually had him marked off here. So Adrian Peterson, with every injury in the book last week, comes out and gets 17 carries. And he ran for 97 yards. And if you look at that box score in the newspaper, or I don't know how many people read newspapers anymore, but if you look at that box score, 97 yards on 17 carries, great efficiency. He literally scored you the absolute minimum number of fantasy points he could last week, 9.7. Didn't catch a ball, did not score a touchdown. Like, there are better days ahead. If you give Adrian Peterson 17 carries every single week, and he runs for 5.1 yards per carry, whatever that comes out to be, you're going to be in a good spot. And there's a lot of guys in this price range that are not going to even sniff 17 carries this week. So I tend to agree with you that this is a volume play. I think it could be a positive game script this week, and I do not mind AP.
So of those guys in between, like, it seems there's a lot of narrative going on right now about the Bears defense. It's like, well, Khalil Mack's hurt. He has this ankle injury. They're not any good anymore. They just had 100 plays. Defenses coming off these overtime games aren't good anymore. Like, I'm still a bit worried that, like, Sony Michel is not like a lock it in play right now, because if he's not scoring touchdowns, you're basically paying for more expensive Adrian Peterson because he's not getting involved in the passing game whatsoever.
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned James White earlier, concerns me, but compared to Sony Michel, I'd prefer White, right? I agree with you. I mean, it's one thing to look at and go, okay, Brock Osweiler just dropped however many points on the Bears defense. What are we talking about here? But I agree. I'm still not trying to run up the gut into this Bears defense. On the other side of the ball with that game, you have another kind of dumpster fire situation with Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen. Howard is a guy that I own in a lot of season-long leagues. He's been absolutely killing me. But Tariq Cohen is popping off the screen for me this week. And what I did is, again, I'm kind of just focusing on him as more of a wide receiver than anything, right? If you remove his rushing, his ground game at all. Last week, he scored 16 DraftKings points, and the week before that, he scored 28 DraftKings points, and that is strictly through the air. So when you're playing New England, and assuming Tom Brady is going to move the ball and score enough points, like, you're going to have to throw to keep up, and Cohen's going to be the guy who's going to be on the field as they're throwing the ball.
The other ones down there, like Kenyon Drake, no one really knows what to do. Jordan Howard, no one really knows what to do. In a week like this, is it better to swerve off? Like, people are going to like Cohen this week. They see, and it makes a lot of sense. Like you just mentioned, the numbers back it up. He's playing the Patriots. They should be able to score on this Patriots defense, especially speed players have just crippled New England's defense the entire season. But in terms of giant tournaments, it's going to leave a lot of these other guys just under-owned, the ones with murky situations, because there's the giant case for Tariq Cohen. This could just be a Jordan Howard game, and we haven't seen it coming. I mean, we kind of say the same thing about Derrick Henry every single week, and it never happens. But it feels like one of these weeks, Jordan Howard, they're just going to turn the faucet back on. It's going to be all him, and people will be like, oh, see, Jordan Howard is great. Then he'll do nothing for like 4 weeks. But it's one of these situations where you're getting to the breaking point because of the cost in a lot of these tournaments that it might be worthwhile to take them. Like if you play 20 lineups, just chuck them in 2.
Yeah, I mean, we get basically 16 Jordan Howard weeks a year, right, when it comes to us kind of chatting about it. And then you look back and you see he might only have 3 or 4. But no, I tend to agree with you. This is such and we talked about it at the top, right? Like, it's such a short slate with the fewest options we've probably seen this season, especially with the London game and 4 teams on a bye, where if you're going to try to win something like the Millie Maker, I suspect that the ownership is going to be even more concentrated this week than it is on a normal basis. So you might have to take a risk on some of these guys with current questionable designations, or guys who are trending in a direction that we would prefer they not be, like a Jordan Howard. I'm not thrilled about it, but you can get some of these pass catchers, some cheap pass catchers down here at the bottom of the player pool, where you might be able to get a little bit more salary relief, and then go get someone like a Todd Gurley or a Melvin Gordon at the top.
So if there is no Dalvin Cook again this week, do you just lock in Latavius Murray?
I guess you have to, right? I mean, is he just going to – I mean, they run so many plays. They don't run the ball as much as I'd like, but what's he going to do? See 25 carries again, or 22 to 25 carries? Like, he's the only guy there. It's always funny with backup running backs where they don't really care how much they use you, right? Because they know their guys coming back. They just hand you the ball 25 times. You end up being a great play. We've seen it a couple times throughout this year and last, where just absolute, like, it's like D'Angelo Williams, right, in Pittsburgh. It's like, oh, we don't care if you get hurt or anything. We'll just give the ball to you 30 times. So yeah, I guess you'd have to plug and play, because I'm not sure what other situation you deal with here. He's going to be the guy.
Yeah, and it's $5,000. It's the great way to baseline your salary cap, that you can afford one of the expensive guys. You can pay down another position if you want, or just find another player in like the low sixes, $5,000 level as your flex if you still want to use a running back in that spot. So everyone below there, you mentioned Peterson. If there's no Thompson, I do think that it's a volume play, a lot like Latavius Murray. I would prefer Murray even at the higher price, but now we're looking at like Carlos Hyde is down here. Like, you're a Philly guy, Clement or Smallwood. Do you just take the guy who's the cheapest price every week?
No, you don't. I think Corey Clement is the guy. I think he's the guy that I would like short term, and he's the guy that I would like long term. I know Wendell Smallwood had more carries last week, but I just think Clement's better. He's more involved in the passing game. He's a better receiver. I think it's a little bit of an anomaly that Smallwood saw more carries. So no, I'm not just taking the cheaper guy. I'm actually going to take, in this case this week, who I believe is the more talented guy, which is Corey Clement.
What about like Carlos Hyde or Duke Johnson this week against Tampa? Because that's a high-scoring game. Tampa really struggles against pass-catching running backs, but if Cleveland gets up, because they still have a pretty good defense. It wasn't on showcase last week against the Chargers, but if they can rattle Jameis or at least limit the Bucs' opportunities and just shut them out a bit early on in the game, we could see a large dosage of Carlos Hyde, and Duke Johnson could be back on the bench.
Yeah, I might just roll with the idea that I don't think Cleveland can get up big on too many teams in the NFL. Imagine us having this conversation 6 months ago about, are they getting up so much that Carlos Hyde is not going to, or that Duke Johnson is just going to be relegated to the bench. I'm not sure that that's a realistic outcome. I do just, if I have to choose between the two of them, I lean Duke Johnson in just the smallest amount, because again, this kind of could be, I understand the Cleveland defense is pretty good, but there's going to be a lot of points scored in this game one way or another. And if it's going to stay close, Duke Johnson has shown a little bit of explosion over the course of the last couple of weeks. I think he's in a better situation, just kind of if this game gets out of hand than Carlos Hyde might be.
On the other side of the ball, are you trusting Peyton Barber at all? Because we trusted the usage through the first 4 weeks and it didn't work. And then everyone was like, screw Peyton Barber, it's Ronald Jones time. Then all of a sudden Peyton Barber's good. Again, the best matchup he's going to have all season long. This matchup on the ground against Cleveland is not the best. Are the Bucs running backs just guys to avoid then? Because people will now be on Peyton Barber, but this is not the time.
Yeah, this is so hilarious. This is awesome. This is awesome fantasy. Ronald Jones is $100 more than Peyton Barber, and Peyton Barber is, I guess, now clearly the lead guy or whatever. It's just such. I was looking at the pricing. I was like, this is a joke. It's just so funny to see both of these guys down here at the bottom, $3,800 and $3,900. I agree with your sentiment that Barber gets all of the volume. I don't like the matchup. You have really no baseline of what to expect here. Would you be surprised if Ronald Jones gets 10 carries this week? No, probably not. I think it's just a situation to avoid all around.
So who are the best plays then, do you think, in the $4,000 range? Because I'm looking at Powell at $4,200 if you really need the savings. I don't mind Buck Allen at $4,500. I think last week was a bit of an aberration because they got up by so much and they were just letting the defense do the dirty work for them in Baltimore. Be like, hey, you're Alex Collins, have your touchdowns, have your carries. He's still going to be in a split with Alex Collins, but he had been getting the goal line touches before that. And if this does become a bit of a track meet with the Saints, I know it's outdoors, but this is still a high total game. It's the third highest on the slate, that if Joe Flacco has to drop back and pass 50 times in this game, Buck Allen's going to be on the field a lot.
Yeah, I don't mind the Buck Allen call. For the guys in the 4,000 range, for me, it's probably Corey Clement, $4,700, banking more on his skill set as opposed to just 1 week looking back. Also, I do like Bilal Powell. So he's got 36 carries in the last 2 weeks, which is more involved than a lot of these guys that you're going to see in this price range are on the ground. And then who was it? I think Duke Johnson at 4,000 is probably not the worst play. But I mean, I guess we can't play Hines anymore, right? Now that Marlon Mack is back. I mean, even though Indy throws the ball all over the yard and he's the pass catcher, I just don't think the volume is going to be there.
No, you really have to get lucky with Nyheim Hines. And when he was playing 69, 75% of the snaps when Mack was out, then he was definitely going to be on the field to absorb those targets. And then he would sneak on the field during red zone situations, and boom, he scores 2 touchdowns in a game, and you look like a genius if you play him. Now, like, Mack isn't a terrible option. I just worry that Buffalo, I feel like anytime that the team plays Buffalo, it just bums them out, and no one tries that hard.
Is that something that Vegas takes into account for too? Just like the depression of Buffalo?
Potentially. Like, the defense has been really good at limiting offenses, but I just think offenses know they don't have to do that much against Buffalo in order to win. Just don't screw up, don't turn the ball over, and you're fine.
Yeah, it is kind of weird. The other side of the coin is that Indy stinks, and Andrew Luck has to throw the ball 100 times a game. So I don't completely disagree with you. I've got a lot of hot takes on Indy and Andrew Luck as we get to that, but I think they're gonna have to throw the ball a ton.
All right, the last guy. Are you going to buy the $3,800 Frank Gore chalk this week? Because I think I'll pass.
God, this is another terrible situation. This, like, the Miami-Detroit game is such a wasteland of great matchups because both teams are bottom 3 in fantasy points allowed to opposing running backs, but like you can't really play a running back on either side of the ball. Like, it's terrible. I'm passing, hard pass.
I think that if I was going to play one of the running backs, like, Carry-On's not like a terrible price, but it's probably just Blunt and hope he scores 3 touchdowns, isn't it?
I suppose, Pat. I mean, yeah, I think we're absolutely throwing darts. So take the guy that when they get to the goal line, see if he rushes it in. I actually don't mind Kerryon Johnson either, but I mean, you could not get me. You'd have to pay me a lot of money to play some of these guys.
Yeah, it probably just makes more sense to pay for that, like one of those mid-range $5,000 guys, and then all of a sudden you can open up value at wide receiver if you really want to, or take one of the guys that you were talking about, like Powell. I like Buck Allen. You like Duke Johnson. I mean, I don't mind Carlos Hyde because of the touchdown potential that could come along with him. He's a bit more expensive. Clement is in that mix too. That you don't need to really bottom feed for really a cap ceiling. Like, what's Frank Gore's best possible day is really the question.
It's like 12 fantasy points, right? Like, if Frank Gore he either runs for 80 yards and does not score a touchdown, or like runs for 40 and does score a touchdown. Like, I mean, I don't know if he can score over 12 fantasy points anymore.
Well, and a lot of people are pointing to what he did last week, but like half his yardage came in overtime.
Yeah, if you could give him a 5th quarter every week, I'd like any one of these running backs. But you're right. It's strictly volume and opportunity. That's not an every week occurrence.
Wide receivers, Adam Thielen, of course, going to be number 1. He hasn't seen fewer than 10 targets in any game. He hasn't caught for fewer than 100 yards in any game. He's scored in half them. He's $8,600. He is the only player above $8,600 at receiver on this slate. Can you go to him, or do you just have to kind of dial it back a little bit? I know the Jets are still banged up in the secondary right now, but still a pretty decent pass defense, and everyone's going to want to use Thielen because they'll all use him in their cash games. Is this the move to pivot to Diggs?
I don't think so. I mean, you just kind of laid it out, Pat. Like, the guy's been unbelievable. He's so heavily involved in an offense that throws constantly. He dominates all of the targets. He finds the end zone. He's $8,600, which I feel like if his name was not Adam Thielen, if his name was Antonio Brown, he might be like $9,600, right? We've seen some of these wide receivers that are putting up literally historic numbers, right? I don't have all the stats in front of me, but I see them on Twitter all the time. Like, 6 straight games of 100 yards. That's never been done, blah, blah, blah. Like literally a historic pace. And he's still, quote, only $8,600 in a really good matchup. I'm okay with buying this. I don't think we need to get too crazy here. I don't think we need to pivot off to a teammate or try to take on more risk with someone like Michael Thomas when the goods are right here in front of us. Let's take them.
All right, so even looking at it right now, like that $7,000 range, you got like Michael Thomas, Mike Evans, Jarvis Landry, Stefan Diggs, Cooks, Woods, or the rest of the 7,000s. Like, you can start with Thielen because I don't know if I want Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry, Mike Evans this week. Do you?
No. So there's good and bad things about all these guys, right? Well, I think there's probably more.
The bad has to be the sporadic usage that we're seeing with Mike Evans. The matchup for Michael Thomas isn't great, although maybe this is a week they lean on him, but who knows? And then you have Jarvis Landry, and he's just been a crapshoot ever since Baker Mayfield came in. He's averaging like 3 catches a game.
Yeah. Yeah, Jarvis Landry still has all the targets. Like when you say Jarvis Landry, it's like, oh, target monster. Yeah, but also Baker Mayfield only completes like 50% of his passes. So it hasn't been ideal. I think there's probably more ceiling for someone like a Jarvis Landry because he is seeing the targets. I think Michael Thomas is only, he is converting all of his targets, but like 5 last week, 4 the week before. Like that's a little bit more concerning to me. I'd almost prefer to have the baseline of targets that Jarvis Landry does, even if obviously I'm not comparing Baker Mayfield and Drew Brees, but like if I'm here and I have to make decisions, I like the 10, 11 targets that we might expect Jarvis Landry to see. But I agree with you. Like even when you get down to the LA guys, like me choosing LA wide receivers, I'm literally throwing darts. Like I don't know. Goff does a really good job of spreading the ball around. I don't know who's going to have a big week. Cooper Kupp tends to get more of the red zone looks, but then you got like, Woods and Cooks are kind of big play guys. So I struggle every single week when I get to LA.
I always end up just taking Robert Woods because I always find that he's the less owned of the three. But now that we're not having Cooper Kupp around, it could hurt the ownership at the top for Cooks and Robert Woods, bring that down because I think a lot of people just use Josh Reynolds at 3,500, which I don't hate by any means.
No, neither do I. It's an offense that I feel like, and we've seen this with other offenses, New England, where they can just kind of plug someone into the system and find success, right? I think that's kind of the same situation that you get with LA because they're such a well-coached team that I'm more willing to take flyers on guys that get plugged into those systems than I am like Cleveland or Arizona, or like obviously a lot of these like bad spots. So I don't disagree with you. And you get a hell of a savings, right?
You do. What do we do with DeAndre Hopkins? $6,900. That's too low for him, obviously, the matchup. Not great. But he did catch 2 touchdowns against Jacksonville last year. They will force the ball to him around the goal line if they can manage to get down there and Deshaun Watson can stay upright.
Yes, it's a lot of ifs, but I agree with you. I tend to think, and we've seen DeAndre Hopkins' salary drop every single week basically since the start of the year, but I'm not entirely sure why. Like I get the Jacksonville matchup, right? It's crazy Jacksonville. It's the number 1, rated defense against fantasy wide receivers, blah, blah, blah. But like, you're right. Like they're going to throw the ball to him 10 times. When they get down to the end zone, they're just going to chuck it up. They're going to let him go up and grab it. If Deshaun Watson's throwing the ball near the end zone, it's going to DeAndre Hopkins. And I think this is kind of an egregious pricing, right? $6,900. He hasn't scored less than 17 fantasy points in any of the last 3 weeks. He's gone off twice in that span. This is too low for a guy who could end up being like a top 5 wide receiver at the end of the week.
So, like most weeks, it feels like this middle area is going to go under owned, but you have like Alshon in this matchup, which I kind of like. I'm surprised at the usage that he's been getting. I thought it would take some time to build back up to that, or it would be more spread out like we saw last season, but that just hasn't been the case whatsoever. He even got over a bad Jenkins matchup last Thursday night and scored 2 touchdowns. So I would actually have no problem. Like if you wanted to build your team, like we'll get to the guy that I'm probably going to have in 100% of my lineups and watch it blow up in my face, but we'll see how that works. But I like Robert Woods. I'll gamble on DeAndre Hopkins because I won't need to play him in that many lineups. Like if I play 10 lineups and I use them in 2, I'm going to be massively overweight on my DeAndre Hopkins shares. But after that, like I don't know which Lions receiver is going to go off, so I'm just going to pass on that. Allen Robinson's very enticing, but Gabriel might be a better play. I love John Brown and I love Alshon. I'll probably go with those 2 guys.
I'm on a similar path. Allen Robinson kind of perked my ears up, but I agree. I think I'd rather prefer Taylor Gabriel here. Yeah, Alshon's looked really good. So I'm probably warmer on him than most, and I try to remove the whole Philly aspect from it. But Carson Wentz is looking better every single week. Alshon Jeffrey's only played 3 weeks this year. He scored at least 25 or 27 fantasy points in 2 of them. He is catching touchdowns. I think this continues to be a really good spot for him. I think we've talked about it a little bit earlier. This Carolina-Philly game could sneakily turn into a shootout. I don't think that's out of the range of outcomes here. And Jeffrey is like the guy. Plug and play, did not need to shake much rust off. We'll talk about Zach Ertz when we get to tight ends. But yeah, this is fine with Alshon Jeffrey. And then for other guys in this range, I mean, are we down into the like Josh Gordon section yet.
People are going to play Josh Gordon this week. Just no, like I'm not doing it. It's fine. He could definitely go off, but like I even ranked him yesterday, number 32 in my like season-long rankings for week 7, and people are like, way too low. He should be like number 10. It's like, what are you people watching?
Yeah. So this is basically the gamble that, he's coming off 9 targets last week, which is the most that he has seen in any week. It's the fact that he plays for New England. It's the fact that Tom Brady can turn any wide receiver into fantasy gold. I prefer him to other New England pass catchers only because he's mostly the cheapest, right? So if we call James White a pass catcher, which for all intents and purposes he is, and we call Julian Edelman obviously a pass catcher, Josh Gordon is the cheapest one of those. So when you kind of came over and said, hey, which Philly running back are you going to take? Is it just going to be the cheapest guy? I kind of pushed back on that, but the New England pass catchers, outside of Chris Hogan, who I'm not playing ever, he is the cheapest. And if Brady spreads the ball around, if he's been the most involved that he's ever been last week, like I don't hate this for Josh Gordon.
I mean, I think we talked about that Philly game. We'll talk about stacks at the very end, but I think I'd almost rather pull the trigger on Devin Funchess.
It's interesting.
Especially as a part of a game stack with, let's say I go with like Wentz, Elshon, Ertz, bring it back with Funchess, or bring it back with Christian McCaffrey, whichever one you want. But I think that would be the way to play that.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it before, like giving yourself a good baseline. He sees 7 or 8 targets every single week. Big receiver that can play in the red zone. I don't hate that. I like it a lot more, as you mentioned, part of a stack. I think that's a good way to play it.
So the sub $5,000 guys, there's plenty of options to choose from here. I think this is the strategy that most people are going to employ, is just drop to this area for wide receiver 2, 3, potentially a flex. Like Chester Rogers is interesting just because Buffalo slows down the game so much that if T.Y. Hilton sits, is he now considered the number 1? And if that's the case, does he draw Tre'Davious White? And does that make like Zach Pascal a decent play against the other side of the Bills defense? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see on that. The injury report is Friday in the DK ownership show, so I'll have a better update on that situation then when I talk through it with Jeff Ulrich. But like Taylor Gabriel, Chris Godwin, who else is down here? Let's see. Kiki against Jacksonville. I think we just saw Cole Beasley set the template of what you can do against this Jags defense. I think that Kiki fits that very well. If Jamison Crowder sits, P. Rich is right there at $4,200. And then probably my favorite play on the entire slate is Jermaine Kearse, and he's coming in at $4,100. Like, I don't see how you can't plug him into this lineup knowing he's playing the slot. That's where Darnold throws. Minnesota just gets exploited by the slot all game long. That is the way to attack them, especially if they can generate any sort of pass rush. Darnold has to get it out quickly. You're looking at a baseline of probably like 8 targets, like you mentioned with Funchess, but higher percentage completion plays. It's a great baked-in floor, and if he sneaks into the end zone, he could be a slate breaker.
I am all in on Kearse with you. I agree with everything you just said. I was over here shaking my head the entire time. It's plug and play. We've seen that he can find success. Sam Darnold they're going to have to throw the ball, right? Like they're going to throw the ball a ton in this game. And I don't see how you can this is a plethora of riches down here in this like $4,000 range. Chester Rogers, just kind of go back to this. I like to look at, when we're at this point in the season, I like to kind of look at different chunks, right? So like the last 3 or the last 4 weeks to try to find some trends that we might not be able to identify as season long, right? When we look at season long targets, it's always Antonio Brown, it's Juju Smith-Schuster, it's Adam Thielen, right? But if we look at smaller subsets of this and just look at the last 3 weeks, Chester Rogers averaging 10.5 targets per game, which is 5th most in the league. Also a benefit because Andrew Luck just throws the ball constantly. But yeah, if there's no T.Y. Hilton and he's the only guy, like great. I'm plugging Chester Rogers into so many of my lineups here. And then I do agree with you for Kiki Kuti, who I agree with. I think that was a really good comparison with Beasley. I have not heard that one yet. I think that's a very good comparison about how both of those guys can impact their roles in the offense and find success. I'm more interested. I'm going to have to go back and watch some tape on him, but I think that's a really good comparison, Pat.
But the $4,100 for Kearse, like, why wouldn't I just use him in every lineup?
Well, do you love punishment? Do you? I
do. Like, listen, I'm bad anyway. So why would I just go? At least if I have a conviction about something, I might as well go all in on it.
I play the same way, right? Like, and we talk about it kind of with golf or with NFL. Like, I keep my core very, very small. I know I'm either going to cash like 90% of my lineups or I'm going to miss every single one. So I agree with you. I don't think the general public tends to play that way. I think they like to spread their exposure around. They like to have basically every player in the league. I disagree with that. But if you are going to go all, if you do have a conviction for a player, if you like them, if you have a reasonable stance on why they could be of value this week, like we do have with Curse, I'm certainly not against doing it. I just don't know how many of your viewers will take you up on that.
Well, it's tough too because Willie Snead's in a revenge game right next to him, who's actually been setting a pretty decent baseline as well every single week. I actually don't hate Willie Snead all that much, but I won't use any because I'll use Curse. And then Albert Wilson is right there at $4,000, and there's no way people are getting away from Albert Wilson after what he did last week. I will because he'll probably score like 1 point this week, and I'll have all the Curse. But like no matter what, at these prices, like Albert Wilson's either going to go 7x's price or like minus 3x's price. That's just sort of the game that he's playing. And then taking a chalky Albert Wilson is probably not the right move. But with Jermaine Curse, like realistically, if he goes 6 for 60, which is a pretty decent baseline, like he pays off for cash games at least. Yeah. And like 12 points isn't killing me, even in a Millionaire Maker lineup, from a $4,100 player. And he gives me access to the top end of those running backs every single time. So that's what I like about it. And I don't think that maybe the ownership is a lot higher than I think it's going to be, but I doubt he cracks 15%, really.
That's probably fair. I'm so bad at guessing ownership, and I guess as the week goes on, we'll see how this goes. But you're right, and I think you're on the right path. I mean, I saw what Albert Wilson did last week, and I also saw what he has done for the rest of his career, which is why I will not be playing him. Right? Like if I miss on another 40-point Albert, like cool, I really don't care. We touched on it a little bit. Taylor Gabriel, I think, is the pass catcher that you want in Chicago. We talked that Trubisky and the Bears probably going to have to throw a lot. I believe this is the highest total on the slate that we have for the Millie Maker, and still only $4,700. 19 fantasy points last week, 33 the week before that. A little riskier because he does not have that baseline of targets. He might only see 5 or 6. He doesn't have that 7, 8, 9 that we've seen from other guys. But I think that he's solidified his role in this offense, and I'm going to be plugging him into a majority of my lineups.
Okay, so Marquise Goodwin. In or out? Because I'm out.
I'm out too.
It's not like the week to play Marquise Goodwin is not the week after he goes crazy in a primetime game, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's really only like 4 catches for whatever it was, 120 yards. Yeah, out.
So when we look at it too, like you see Goodwin there, you can have Gabriel instead. Chris Godwin just seems, he catches a touchdown every single week, so that's fantastic news. But what about I'm going to defer to you as being an Eagles guy. What about Aguilar at 5,000? Because you talked about an Eagles stack, Wentz, Ertz, Elshon. It's affordable. You can do it. And you have these other receivers that you can put into place to make that extremely affordable, even if you wanted to bring someone back in that game. But is he the forgotten man here, that he could be the one that goes off, not Elshon this time around? And would that be worth it to gamble on in a tournament?
He is forgotten, and I believe it is for good reason, Pat. He was really only ever in our conversations because of how decimated the Eagles were to start the year, right? If everyone was healthy, we probably never would have gotten, what was he, $6,100 Nelson Aguilar. We had a Nelson Aguilar chalk week. Do you remember that? That's insane. So I think that it's just perception based on, now his price is really low, when his price never should have been that high anyway. It was just a product of the situation. He doesn't see enough targets for me. There's Ertz is so heavily involved in the pass game. You've got they're circling the running back, saying Corey Clement can catch the ball. You've got Alshon Jeffrey. He's at best like the 4th option on this team. I think that his price is not low enough yet, coming down from that chalk week.
Okay, so you talk about Allen Robinson, you talk about Taylor Gabriel. What about Albert Wilson at $3,400, averaging 4 targets a week? He's past that shoulder injury. He's got a touchdown in 2 of the 4 weeks, and he's playing almost 60% of the snaps for the Bears. I feel like Gabriel is going to be popular because people are going to stack that game, but Anthony Miller seems like the piece that everyone will just kind of overlook because, hey, well, I'm already playing Cohen and Gabriel and Trubisky. I don't have any room for Miller, but he might be the guy.
I was wondering who you were talking about. I was like, $3,400. I was like, well, I don't see that. Okay, yeah. Anthony Miller. So I only like to get to like these, wide receiver 3s or these super cheap guys in the situation that you described, which is a game stack. You're not going to see me plug Anthony Miller in as just like, oh, the final piece of $3,400 that I need. Like, that's not going to happen. I want this Bears New England game to score 80 points or something like that, right? So there are situations where I'm tapping into these guys. It's very specific. It's on a game stack that I think could turn into a shootout. But yeah, I mean, outside of that, you're right. For $3,400, I mean, we talked about value a little bit before. What does he need? 9 points, 10 points. If he gets 12 points, you're probably pretty thrilled, right? Like, he needs one play or two plays to kind of get you to value. So yeah, I could get onto it in a certain situation.
The problem is he's caught touchdowns in 2 of his 4 games, and he's still yet to score more than 10 DraftKings points. So that's a bit rough.
Is that a problem?
It could be somewhat problematic unless you're playing showdown only slate and somehow he catches 2 touchdowns, then you're dancing. But it's just as a way to take a piece away from that giant stack, unless that's one you just want to avoid. But there's a lot of moving parts in that game. Like, the play might just be, and we'll talk about this at the end again when we talk about stacks, but either just play Brady or play Trubisky and just hope it gets spread out, because that's a live option for this game with so many different weapons.
Yeah, and that's a strategy that I kind of employ sometimes with like Jared Goff too, right? Like I told you, I don't love picking Rams wide receivers, so I've played a few lineups of naked Goff, and it's been okay. So I don't disagree. When you have there's not a obvious stack or an obvious route of 2-3 guys of how they're going to score their fantasy points. I'm much more likely to kind of take a naked QB.
Cole Beasley, $3,900 coming off 2 touchdowns at Washington. In or out?
Out again. I usually don't buy guys after 2 touchdown games, and now everybody's on them.
Saints secondary options, whether it be Ginn, whether it be Traquan, Cam Meredith, in or out?
Out.
Okay.
I think there's going to be a lot of points scored. I do like Drew Brees this week. I just think they can do it a lot of different ways where we're really at the bottom of the barrel if we're getting down to Ginn, who actually, if I have to, I prefer Ginn, but I don't really want either of these guys.
I always have a problem with Ginn outdoors. He never seems to perform up to snuff like he does on the fast track. So
that's like the entire Saints offense is the same way.
A little bit, but he seems to be especially affected by it. Cam Meredith might be the best one of that bunch. I'm probably not going to play any of them because there are a few guys down here that if you're taking a shot, you can make a better case for a giant day from them. But how about the tertiary Carolina options? If we think that's going to be a high-scoring game and Philly really struggles with immense speed, like DJ Moore has a ton of speed, Curtis Samuel has a ton of speed, your main man Torrey Smith in a revenge game, he has a ton of speed despite the fact he's 79 years old.
I was going to say, does he still have that speed? He is super old. I out of the names that you pointed out, the one that I did have like a little star next to was DJ Moore. I've for whatever reason watched a lot of Panthers games this year. I think it's probably because I've rostered a lot of Christian McCaffrey. I've rostered a lot of Cam Newton. I've been pretty impressed with DJ Moore, right? He seems to fit into this offense more and more every week. He's got 4 catches in each of the last 2. Has not scored a touchdown since week 2, but I do think, we talked about it. Like if I can't say that I think this game might turn into a shootout and then say, oh no, there's not enough points to go around or whatever. Like he's only $3,900. And I've been impressed with him. He's one of these wide receiver is a position where experience matters, right? And when these guys step in the first couple years, it's tough. I've been impressed with DJ Moore, and I think he's only going to get better. I like him long term, and I don't mind him this week at 3,900.
See, the problem is that when Greg Olsen came back last week, it seemed to bump DJ Moore off the field a lot more than usual. So he only played 45% of the snaps last week against Washington. That was a very pass-happy game for the Carolina offense because they were behind so much. Torrey Smith was on the field for 70% of the snaps last week. I think that's the way that I would go here.
Are you concerned at all that Torrey Smith is terrible?
Yes, I am. That's a huge concern. But I think that's mitigated by his revenge situation. And he got a touchdown and a 2-pointer last week. Like, they're not afraid to no one covers him near the goal line, so that helps.
Yeah, I think there's a reason that nobody covers him near the goal line. I will not be with you on Torrey Smith, but yeah, I'm now sure he will score 2 touchdowns and catch a long one too. Now
that it's been announced that Derek Anderson is starting for the Bills, does that bring up your Zay Jones stock?
Oh yeah, it brings it up massively. No, you can't get me to play a Bills offensive player. I'm actually trying to find one that I would play, and I don't think they exist.
So I guess the last few are Zach Pascal, if T.Y. Hilton sits, could be in for 10 plus targets against the Bills if the Colts continue to throw at that same pace. So that's not a terrible option down in the $3,600 level. Damian Ratley, for the Browns if they continue to have these injuries. Like he was the only Cleveland receiver who could do anything last week, and this is the best matchup that he's going to get all season long. But Josh Reynolds is really the one that I think that everyone is going to focus on. Like people are going to use him in cash.
Wow. Okay, sure. That's pretty aggressive, but I do like him. I think you've narrowed down the ownership and where it's going to go, right? I think Pascal, as long as there's no T.Y. Hilton, he's probably going to be involved. And then Josh Reynolds, we talked about a little bit earlier, just kind of as a plug and play into the system is fine. I'm not sure I trust him as much as cash because there's so many weapons. Like this could be like another one of these, just massive Todd Gurley games and Robert Woods catches a few balls and there's nothing left, right? Because they've just blown out San Francisco and we've moved on with this. So I'm not sure I trust him that much, but I do recognize that this is a good spot to get a guy who's what is he, $3,500, Pat?
Yeah, 3,500. So yeah, I get why people like it. So you might have to, like, if you play 10 lineups, do you have to use them in like half of those to be super overweight to the field if you're going to do it?
Yeah, probably, right? He's going to be super popular, which is a little bit scary, but probably half, four or five.
All right, let's switch to quarterbacks. Where are you paying for a quarterback?
Oh my God, I have so many hot takes about quarterback. Okay, so we live in a world that Jared Goff is the highest salaried quarterback. Like that's pretty crazy. We talked about the Rams wide receivers. I have an issue playing Goff because I can't stack him as easily as I can other quarterbacks. So I'm actually dropping down to who I think is going to be a great play this week, and it's Andrew Luck. So I think you and I have talked about this before, Pat. There's a few things that drive ownership on the DraftKings lobby. One of them is whether the player has an injury designation, and another one is what the opponent rank is. And Buffalo is ranked as the number one defense against quarterbacks. But I'm not super worried about that. One, because defenses don't matter. And two, because Andrew Luck is just probably going to throw the ball 50 times, right? I have a little bit of concern that Buffalo slows this game down. Indy's the fastest team in the league. Buffalo's like 16th or 17th. But he's unbelievable. Like to put this in perspective, Andrew Luck is on pace to shatter Matt Stafford's record for passing attempts in a season. Absolutely shatter it. Not even close. In his last 3 games, he's averaging 54 pass attempts, nearly 380 yards, and almost 4 touchdowns. It's just a volume situation. He is the offense. I don't care what the defense is. Give me Andrew Luck. So
I like Andrew Luck as well. It's going to be tough for me to wrap my mind around some of the other pricing that's out this week because, like I mentioned, that Philly-Carolina game, you're giving me Cam at $5,900. Like, yeah. They're just tempting me with this. He might score 0 points, but you're going to have to talk me out of like Baker Mayfield at $5,800. I really like Joe Flacco. He's only $5,400. Like there's a lot of savings to be had. And if this means I can pay for the cheaper QB and pay up at receiver along with running back or potentially at tight end, that might be the move.
There are a ton of quarterbacks like under 6,000 that I love. I agree with you. Cam Newton popped up on my list. I mean, even if we talk about Drew Brees, right? Like Drew Brees is $5,700. I get it. He's outdoors. He's on the road. But this is Drew Brees. I looked back at the last 4 seasons, which is what I have in my database. He's never been less than $6,400. He's $700 cheaper than his lowest price in any of the last 4 seasons, coming off a bye. And why, Pat? Why is the Baltimore defense so good? Is it because they're good, or is it because they faced Josh Allen, Andy Dalton, Case Keenum, Ben Roethlisberger, Baker Mayfield, and Marcus Mariota? That is not exactly a murderer's row of quarterbacks. In fact, not a single one of those guys is in the top 12 in passer rating, and 4 of them are basically 28th or worse. Like, I think they're a good defense, but they have benefit from just an absolutely terrible schedule, and you can give me Drew Brees with an extra week to prepare all his weapons and the cheapest he's ever been. Yeah, lock it up.
So what you're saying is the stack that's going to win the Millionaire Maker is Brees, Kamara, and Michael Thomas?
No, it's Brees, Michael Thomas, and Mark Ingram, Pat. That's the most devastating one.
Please.
That's the most devastating to you. But no, would that be unreasonable? I mean, Michael Thomas could be the top 3 scoring wide receiver. We talked about Alvin Kamara could end as running back 1. Would you be shocked if Drew Brees was quarterback 1 at the end of the week? And all of those guys are going to be underowned because you've got the outdoor situation, you've got the road situation, and you've just got like this concern around Kamara and Thomas trending in the wrong direction.
No, I think that actually makes a lot of sense. It's almost like we talked about with the DeAndre Hopkins situation where it's never too good. Like, it's never great to pivot onto a player because of low ownership. It's like, oh, well, I don't want to use Jermaine Kearse or Josh Reynolds. They're going to be 15% owned. I'll pivot to this guy who's terrible because no one's going to own him. It's always a really bad idea. The better contrarian move is always pivot onto the good players who no one's taking because of things like bad matchup, the injury concern, the narrative that Drew Brees sucks outdoors, which is not true. It's just he's better indoors than he is outdoors. He's still good outdoors. He's like a regular good quarterback outdoors. Yeah. At home, he's an awesome quarterback.
Yeah. He's historically awesome at home. That's the only difference.
Yeah, so when you juxtapose the two, it doesn't look great. But yeah, I can get on board with that. I have to make like a lineup or two that's the Saints stack, bring it back with my main man, John Brown, and we'll see how we do.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, that's what we probably should have covered as far as wide receivers go, like those Baltimore wide receivers, right? I mean,
I just like John Brown. I like John Brown every week, and he's coming off a bad week where he was treated like they basically locked down John Brown and left everyone else on the field open. Like, that's fine. If that happens again, then maybe that's what teams start doing. But Marshawn Lattimore's banged up. I don't think the Saints can cover anyone. I'm not too concerned about that.
No. Yeah, I feel it. I think that game's going to be sneaky high scoring. I think there's going to be a lot of points there.
Well, even like when you look at pace stats as well, like you mentioned Indy being the fastest team in the league. Baltimore is second fastest team in the league. The Saints are slow, but when they've trailed in games by more than 7 points, or even with just when they've been down in a negative script where they can't just run the ball and milk the clock, because they're very smart about milking the clock when they're up, as teams should be, but aren't. When they're down in games, they're like a top 10 pace all of a sudden. So if Baltimore can jump up like 7-0, 10-0, 10-3, 14-7, something like that, the Saints are just going to be full octane the entire time.
Yep, there's a lot of reasonable game scripts where a lot of plays get run here.
Okay, tight ends. You want to talk about tight ends? You probably have Zach Ertz takes. Is he the guy to lock in at 7,100? Because that's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. I do have Zach Ertz takes, and I had one for Andrew Luck, and don't quote me on this one, but I also believe Zach Ertz is on pace to break the tight end receiving record. Like, as far as usage goes, it's been nuts. So, he's clearly the cream of the crop. I'm not touching, Rob Gronkowski. I'm either paying up for Zach Ertz or I'm going down to like the $4,000 range. Eric Ebron, if I'm playing my Andrew Luck lineups, which I'm going to have a lot of, I assume I'm going to have a lot of Eric Ebron as well, just to correlate those as much as possible. But yeah, there's probably only 4 or 5 tight ends that I'm willing to play this week. Ertz clearly my favorite. I don't think that's much of a hot take.
Yeah, Ertz, if you can afford him. Ebron, Kittle, Njoku. Who would be the pay down guy?
Yeah, so Njoku would be paying down. I think he's got like the second most targets of any tight end in the last 3 weeks. Is again, we talked about the Baker Mayfield has to actually complete the pass to you, but targets are at least a good start. And then I wouldn't be upset going down even a few steps further and getting like OJ Howard at $3,600.
Yeah, I could see that.
I mean, just Jameis continues to fire the ball his way. I think that's, again, so cheap, $3,600. He finds the end zone one time. He's paid for himself. If
you're going to punt, now that everyone in Jacksonville is dead besides James O'Shaughnessy, could you roll him out?
I don't know. I don't think so. I'm not usually a big punter when it comes to the tight end position. I like to get someone who I at least have a little bit of knowledge about, but no, O'Shaughnessy does not pique my interest too much. I just don't think there's enough opportunity. If it was a showdown slate, yeah, maybe. And he was only like $1,000. I think I could get on him, but there's better options for not that much more expensive at the tight end position.
Well, what about Gerald Everett then at $2,700? He seemed to be the Rams receiver that filled in for Cooper Kupp. And if we do free up some red zone targets, maybe it's not Josh Reynolds, maybe it's Gerald Everett. Would that be a more calculated gamble, tying yourself to a much better offense?
I think your term calculated gamble is perfect for this, right? It's logical, but understanding that it's still a risk. I agree with you. The missing Kupp benefits red zone targets, right? Because that's what he was kind of dominating as far as the LA offense goes. So if you're getting someone who's going to step into that role, whether we can determine whether it's a wide receiver or Gerald Everett, now that is a logical risk to take. I do like that one.
Defenses to close this out. If we go to the very top, you're going to see the Jags, but they're only $3,600. So could they pay off their entire price, 3x value in sacks alone against Deshaun Watson?
Yeah, because he falls down constantly, right? I mean, the numbers of sacks are fairly insane, and I was surprised to see this at only $3,600. We've seen the Jags in somewhat good situations before, I think like $4,100, $4,200. The pricing's pretty soft here on defenses. You can have almost anybody that you want. So yeah, Jacksonville certainly pops off for me. Washington is on my list as well, just because Dallas gives up a ton of sacks. This is kind of like a low total game. I think that Washington can pay themselves off by getting to the quarterback. There's really anybody you want here, you can probably fit into your lineup, I assume.
Yeah, I think you go out of your way to pay up. It's not that expensive. If they were like 42, that would be tougher. We just talked about a ton of ways that you can save money. Like Houston's defense also isn't bad going up against Blake Bortles. That could always be a bonanza of points. Watch this be like 54-50 just because everyone's just like, no one's going to be able to stand up in this game. It's going to be stupid. If I was going to pay down, like I kind of like the Jets at 2,100 against the Vikings. Kirk Cousins gets sacked. Kirk Cousins does stupid stuff all the time. They score, but they also generate fantasy points as well. Baltimore is somewhat intriguing, I think, against New Orleans, just because people aren't going to use them. Because it's weird, because people will talk themselves out of breeze because the defense is too good. Yet those same people won't use Baltimore's defense because the Saints are too good on offense. Like, it's really weird.
Right. It's mental Olympics on how you have to fill out lineups every week. I go through it myself. But no, you're right. There is there's a trend where there's actually value in defenses. Unfortunately, they're super volatile, but people don't understand that you can give up 21 points, 24 points, and still be a really good scoring defense because you got to the quarterback, because you picked a pass off. Like, yeah, Minnesota throws the ball, right? They do stupid things. Like, they run a lot of plays. Like, sure, let's target them. They're going to score 21, 24, who knows? But there's going to be opportunity there. And I think that is one of the situations in DFS that is still pretty exploitable, is people just going wrong on defense, and they get saved a lot because defense is so volatile that we don't have a lot of sample size. But it's a mistake to avoid these high octane offenses that throw a lot just because they do so.
Yeah, and I mean, throwing generates fantasy points probably a 10 times the amount of clip for defensive points than running does. So, and it extends the game by stopping the clock as well. Like, it's much easier to generate fantasy points off a sack, which could potentially lead to a fumble, which leads to a touchdown, or a pressure that leads to a pick, than knocking a fumble out and returning it for a touchdown. Like, right. That's a very low. That's not the optimal outcome for your defense if that's what's going on. But I should have taken my own advice, because I always fade whatever like the top two chalk defenses are, because like you said, it's so volatile, it doesn't matter. And then as Brock Osweiler gets the nod, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll play Chicago's defense. That makes a lot of sense. I had zero Chicago defense because I knew they were going to be chalky because they were a good price. I was like, I'll just pay down for the Cardinals because that's who I really liked. I liked the Bills last week. And then I took some off, some exposure, reworked lineups, went with Chicago, and it didn't work out. I think you can use, like, the Colts are that team this week. Everyone's using the Colts against Derek Anderson. And I don't think that there's going to be a need for it. Like, Buffalo's going to try to run the ball as much as possible in this game.
Yeah, they want it to be over as soon as possible. There's a lot of good options. There's nobody who's too expensive. And yeah, I mean, I actually played a lot of Arizona last week too. And on paper, that would have been like, oh my gosh, why are you playing this $2,000 defense in this situation? But it's so volatile, and the way that you can score points, as you described, Pat. There's very specific ways to score big points on defense, and they come when you're playing a team that's going to throw the ball and run a lot of plays.
So the teams that I'm looking at in terms of adjusted sack rate so far this season, like Baltimore is just a really good one for generating sacks. Detroit actually has the best adjusted sack rate defensive line-wise of any team in football. Like, that is a team that no one's going to use because the Dolphins put up points last week. But if Detroit can get up in this game and you get to tee off on, it's looking like it's going to be Brock Osweiler again. Now that I referred to him yesterday as a knuckleball pitcher, that if you're not ready for him, he can really overwhelm you. You got a week to prepare for Brock. Tee off. I like the Lions D. I like the Ravens D. I like the Jets D if you're not going to pay up for the Jags. Either pay up for the Jags or pay down down for these guys. Don't use those mid-tier chalk defenses. Like, there's no need to pay $3,300 for the Colts when you could pay $3,600 for the Jags.
Yeah, I love it. And I think the Lions are a really good spot to imagine licking your chops for a week's worth of watching Brock Osweiler tape. Like, those guys are going to be loving this. They're ready to rock and roll.
All right, let's close with stacks. What are your favorite ones of the week? Because I really do. I really like that Philadelphia-Carolina game is one to shoot out, and I think that Saints-Ravens game could be another one, and everyone is going to be focused, I think, on the Rams and 49ers because they watched the 49ers put up points. The Rams D hasn't been all that good, and now taking Cooper Kupp out of the situation leaves, at least in people's minds, more concentration for that Rams offense. I think that's not a terrible game to not necessarily avoid, but not to stack.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. We talked about Philly, Carolina. I mentioned I'm going to have, unfortunately, it'd be a team stack as opposed to a game stack with the Colts. But how about the Jets, right? So we kind of talked about this. If you wanted to go super, super cheap, you could do like Sam Darnold, Jermaine Kearse. I don't know if you want to throw Robbie Anderson into that mix too.
I'd probably throw Pryor into that mix if he plays with the groin injury, just because no one will use him.
There you go. And then you can go on the other side and grab Thielen. Like now
Diggs.
You can pay up for the guys on the other side of this game.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. Or you could bring it back with Dalvin Cook if he's healthy and just have the super contrarian stack of the year.
There you go. So I don't mind that one. And then also, we've seen the Bears continue to put up points. If you did like a Trubisky, Tariq Cohen, and then went back to the other side and tried to get whether it's James White involved in that offense or someone from the New England side, I think that you could find some pretty good combinations there.
So in terms of points on this main slate, you mentioned it earlier, Rams 49ers 52.5 is the highest, and that's followed by, let's see, that's this 50 game right here, the Cleveland Bucks game. Like, that's a game where I think that instead of game stacking it, you can pick and choose the cheap pieces and just throw them in lineups. Like Godwin, you can throw Njoku into a lineup, and you're probably pretty good.
Yeah, this is really interesting because this is a discrepancy between what Vegas thinks is going to happen and what is available in the DraftKings lobby, right? So when you see like Cleveland, really good defense, really good, like, well, they might be a really good defense, but Vegas thinks a lot of points are going to be scored here. So that's an opportunity to, I think, get an against the grain opportunity of, maybe not an entire game stack, but go get the pieces that you want. Don't be afraid to play them. There's very likely going to be a lot of points scored here.
Yeah, in the New England Bears game 49, the Baltimore New Orleans game actually has a higher total by a half point, which you're not going to see that correlate in terms of how people use players on DraftKings. Far more players will be used in the Chicago-New England game and concentrate a lot of ownership as opposed to the Ravens-Saints game. So I think that's a nice pivot stack if you just want to move off that one game onto another, if stacking is what you want to do.
Right. Which I think it is, right? I think we're at the point where if you're trying to win the Millie Maker, you almost certainly have to stack the highest total, the highest scoring game, or what ends up being the highest scoring game, and then have the kind of other pieces. We're well past the point of, picking the best player in every single game and just hoping every single one of them scores a touchdown. I think game stacking is now the optimal way to play this.
Can you get yourself in too deep with stacking though? Like if you do a team stack, do you do the quarterback plus just one, or do you do the triple stack and bring it back with like a double receiver stack on the other side and hope, like you said, that is the game that shoots out?
Yeah, you can get in too deep. I think 3's fine. I'm okay with the triple stack. I think what I'd prefer you do is you actually have to think about how this game is going to play out, right? Like you don't stack your own running back or quarterback running back just to get jam guys into these lineups because they're part of this game. Or if you mentioned it a couple times, if someone shoots out to a lead, what has to happen next? Okay, the other side's going to have to throw a lot. So I think you can overthink this by just trying to get as many players into your lineup from a single game. I think that's wrong, but I'm okay with going, a triple and then bringing it back with one if you have a logical, game script that ends up being a good play, right? You don't want to just kill your lineups from the start by not over correlating, but just correlating or putting in players that don't correlate in what you think could actually happen.
All right, Rick Gehman. Oh. DFS On Demand. Follow him on Twitter at DFS On Demand. Tell us where we can find all your work. Yeah, you nailed it. DFSondemand.com. Rick Rungood on YouTube.
We are back with the shortest off season ever with golf, which is exciting. A lot of new tools up there. NBA season's back, working on those tools now. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff. I like to think that I'm making improvements every single season, but I'm excited about NBA, NFL right in the heart of it, and PGA is always my true love.
We'll when the major season comes back around, we'll get the mix going for PGA once again. But it's just swing season stuff right now. Although I have my golf show up, and the swing season is super exploitable.
Oh, I completely agree with you. First of all, there's like 10 guys at the bottom that you can just like chop off the bottom of the player pool. And there's so much value. I mean, we could do another hour on that, but you're right. There's a lot of opportunity, especially with all the NFL players dipping their toes into the PGA pools. It's a lot of fun.
Well, and that's the whole key to it right there, is that there's so many people playing NFL all the time. They're like, What else can I play? Oh, I'm going to enter the Thursday Night Showdown contest. Might as well throw in a few lineups into this golf that I've never played before. Like, it's the softest money you'll see on any golf site. And the prize pools are still pretty good. Like, it's $50K to first for the $6 this week. Like, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I fired it up and I was like, whoa, there's a 50 grand to first in the CJ Cup, which is, something that nobody's ever heard of. But I agree with you. People have money in their accounts and they're looking to burn it.
All right. Pat Mayo, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at the PME. My DK cheat sheet will be up on DKPlaybook.com on Thursday morning once I get more information to go. Friday, I got the injury report and DK ownership show. I'll be live Sunday morning and Monday morning, both 10 a.m. Eastern time on the DraftKings YouTube channel, updating with injuries and ranks and plays on Sunday morning and taking your questions, waiver wire recap, and your questions on Monday, plus the spread show. You gotta watch the spread show, which means I need to inform you that the odds and lines are subject to change, and see the website for actual odds. If you anyone you know has a gambling problem and does want help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Just remember to go do that. Anyway, smash the like button, get into the draw for 20 DK bucks by leaving your DK handle in the comment section after smashing that like button, and tell me your favorite play on the main slate that's less than $5,000 in week 7. Someone go win $1 million bucks, all right? I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!